Hello friend, I'm Mahesh, and on this channel, you listen to horror stories narrated by me. Today's story is Waverly Hills Sanatorium, The Lurking Shadows. So let's dive into the chilling tale of this haunted Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The rain drummed softly against the rusted iron gates of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, a haunting rhythm that seemed to echo the sorrow trapped within its decaying walls. Emily Carter stood at the entrance, clutching an old photograph. Her grandmother, young and radiant, standing right here in 1932, the year the sanatorium swallowed thousands of lives. "Promise me," her grandmother had whispered on her deathbed. "Find out what really happened. Why they never let me leave." Emily's hands trembled as she folded the photograph, her heart heavy with grief and an unbearable curiosity. She wasn't just chasing a family secret. She was stepping into a place where the dead still whispered. The door creaked open with a low, guttural groan as Emily entered the hollowed ruins. Darkness wrapped around her, thick and suffocating. Her flashlight flickered. Snap! A sharp noise echoed from the third floor. She froze. Suddenly, a shadow darted past the end of the corridor. Too fast, too silent. The air grew cold, her breath clouding before her. She turned, but there was no one. Bam! The heavy metal doors slammed shut behind her. In the suffocating silence, a child's voice, brittle and distant, whispered, "You shouldn't be here." A pale handprint appeared on the fog glass, small and still wet. Emily's search led her to the solarium, where patients once lay in rows, their lungs rotting from tuberculosis, their hopes decaying faster than their bodies. She found an old leather journal buried under broken tiles, her grandmother's. The pages were yellowed, but her words bled through. "They lied to us. We weren't being treated. They were experimenting, and when someone got too sick, they sent them to the body chute. I saw them take my sister." Emily's throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. Her grandmother had watched her own sister be discarded like waste. No goodbyes, no graves. Emily realized this wasn't just a haunting, it was a graveyard of secrets. The basement, once used for the deadliest experiments, was colder than death itself. Emily's flashlight flickered out. In the pitch black, she heard it, the dragging of chains, heavy and wet. A dim emergency light sputtered to life, revealing dozens of shadows slithering along the walls. In the corner, a nurse stood motionless, her hollow eyes locked onto Emily. But then, the unbelievable. Her grandmother's locket dangled from the nurse's skeletal fingers. "Grandma," Emily croaked as the nurse stepped forward, her face shifting, morphing into her grandmother's young, terrified visage. "Leave before they see you," the apparition hissed, before vanishing into the dark, leaving the locket in Emily's shaking hand. Emily fled, heart pounding, but the deeper she ran, the more twisted the halls became, as if the building itself was alive, reshaping its maze to trap her. On the wall, smeared in something dark and thick, a message bled through. The 502. That's where it ends. Emily knew the legend. Room 502, where a nurse hung herself in 1928, but no one ever found out why. The locket in her palm burned hot, as if urging her forward. Her grandmother's secrets weren't buried. They were screaming to be found. And Emily? She wasn't leaving Waverly Hills, not until she unlocked the truth. The rain hadn't stopped. It poured relentlessly as if the skies themselves mourned the souls trapped inside Waverly Hills. Emily sat against the damp wall of a crumbling hallway, clutching the locket, her grandmother's locket that now felt heavier than ever. Her fingers traced the initials engraved on its back. MC, Margaret Carter. She could still hear her grandmother's frail voice. "They never wanted us to leave, Emily. They locked our souls in there." A lump formed in her throat as the realization sank in. Her grandmother wasn't warning her to uncover a secret. She was begging for release. Emily wiped her tears, but something deeper than fear had taken hold now. She had to finish this, for her grandmother, for the others. The silence was brutal as Emily climbed the decaying staircase toward the 5th floor. Every step groaned beneath her, and the cold felt alive, wrapping around her like skeletal fingers. Room 502 stood at the end of a long, hollow corridor, its door ajar, swinging ever so slightly. As she approached, her flashlight flickered, then died. Again. "Not now," she whispered. In the darkness, a sharp metallic clang rang out, followed by dragging footsteps. Slow, deliberate. She turned, but the hall was empty. Bang! The door of room 502 slammed shut behind her. Inside, the air thickened, heavy with the smell of rust and something rotting. The window where the nurse had supposedly hung herself was wide open, though they were 5 floors up. Icy wind howled through. Then she saw it. Deep crimson handprints smeared along the walls, leading toward the window. Emily's heart raced when a cold hand gripped her ankle from beneath the dust-covered gurney. She yanked away, but the whisper crawled into her ear. "She's still here." Emily stumbled into the corner of the room, gasping, the locket swinging wildly around her neck. Her trembling fingers touched the wall where, beneath layers of grime, she uncovered faint carvings. "Forgive me." She realized it wasn't a warning. It was a confession. Flicking her lighter, the soft glow revealed a broken journal wedged between the floorboards. It belonged to the nurse, Evelyn Hart. The pages were water-damaged, but one entry bled through. "They made me do it. The experiments, the children. I couldn't live with what I'd done. I hear their screams at night." Emily's throat tightened, tears welling. The nurse hadn't taken her own life out of guilt alone. She had been a part of something horrific. And worse, Emily realized, those children were still here, their pain lingering, their cries trapped in the walls. Her grandmother hadn't just been a patient. She had witnessed it all. A sudden gust slammed the window shut, and the entire room vibrated as if the building itself was angry. The journal in Emily's hands snapped shut, and the floor beneath her cracked, revealing a hidden hatch. Curiosity clawed at her. She pried it open, revealing a narrow chute, an old laundry shaft, but this one led deeper than it should have. Emily crawled inside, her body scraping against rusted metal until she dropped into a cavernous underground chamber. What she saw was impossible. Rows of preserved medical equipment, files, and worse, dozens of child-sized coffins, untouched by time. Her breath caught when she noticed one coffin slightly ajar. Inside was a doll, matted, dirty, but clutched tightly in its hand was another locket, identical to hers. Only this one had a new set of initials, E.H. Evelyn Hart. The nurse hadn't left. She was buried here, alongside the victim she'd failed. A cold voice echoed through the chamber. "You found me. Now help me leave." The chamber trembled, dust swirling as shadows danced along the stone walls. Emily grabbed the second locket, feeling a jolt of energy surge through her. Then the lights flickered to life. Faded maps lined the walls, showing a labyrinth of underground tunnels stretching miles beneath the sanatorium. A blood-red X marked a place labeled simply the core. But before Emily could process it, the ground above cracked and dozens of whispers filled the chamber. A final message, scrawled in Evelyn's handwriting on the wall, read, "The core holds what we tried to bury. If it wakes, no one leaves." Emily's heart raced. Whatever was in the core wasn't just a ghost. It was something much worse. And now, it knew she was here. The cold seeped into Emily's bones as she navigated the endless underground tunnels, each breath echoing like a ghost sigh. Her grandmother's locket hung heavy around her neck, now joined by Evelyn Hart's. Two souls bound by a past that refused to rest. Emily's mind raced with her grandmother's last words. "You can set them free, Emily." But how? The deeper she ventured, the more the air thickened with pain, sorrow, and something ancient. Something that was waking. Her flashlight flickered again, not from dying batteries, but from the electric charge in the air, like the calm before a storm. She wasn't alone down here. She never was. Shock and fear. The tunnels led to a vast chamber, the core. Massive stone walls curved overhead, etched with symbols long forgotten. In the center stood a rusted iron cage, its bars twisted outward as if something monstrous had once broken free. Surrounding it were remnants of old experiments, chains, medical tools, and bones, human and inhuman. Suddenly, a bone-rattling growl echoed through the cavern, followed by the metallic scrape of claws against stone. From the shadows emerged a towering figure, its form distorted, its face a blur of all the souls it had consumed. Emily froze as it lunged, but the two lockets around her neck glowed fiercely, forming a barrier that stopped the beast inches from her. Its hollow eyes locked onto hers as it hissed, "You carry their pain and their power." The ground trembled and the chamber began to collapse. Tears and tragedy. Emily stumbled backward, her mind spiraling as memories not her own flooded in. Evelyn's guilt, the children's fear, and her grandmother's final days in the sanatorium, trapped and forgotten. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she realized the truth. The experiments here weren't about curing disease, they were about immortality. The doctors had tried to bind souls to this place, to control death itself, but instead they'd unleashed something worse, and her grandmother had died trying to stop it. Emily clutched the lockets, feeling the heartbreak, the loss, and the years of torment trapped within these walls. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No one should have suffered this." Unbelievable reveal. As if her apology was a key, the ground beneath her feet split open, revealing a swirling vortex of light and darkness. The true heart of the core. The creature roared, its form unraveling as the souls it had consumed began to break free, swirling upward in streaks of white light. Among them, Emily saw her grandmother's face, peaceful, smiling, as she drifted upward. But the beast fought back, clawing at the souls, dragging them down. Emily, without thinking, ripped the lockets from her neck and hurled them into the core. A blinding explosion of light filled the cavern, and for a moment there was silence. When Emily opened her eyes, she was outside, standing in front of Waverly Hills. The building was gone, reduced to rubble. The air was clear, the storm had passed, and for the first time in decades, the land felt still. In her hand was a single feather, glowing softly, the last gift from her grandmother. Conclusion. Emily stood among the ruins, the morning sun breaking through the clouds. She felt the weight of what had happened, the lives lost, the horrors unleashed, but also the peace that now lingered in the air. She realized something profound. Pain, guilt, and fear could trap us in places we were never meant to stay, but forgiveness, both of others and ourselves, was the key to freedom. The town slowly returned to normal, no longer haunted by whispers from the sanatorium. Emily dedicated her life to uncovering forgotten stories, giving voice to those lost in history, ensuring that places like Waverly Hills were remembered not for their darkness, but for the light that could finally break through. As she walked away, the wind carried a soft whisper. "Thank you.